Hello there. So, see, this week was honestly really normal. Thus, as just a disclaimer, it's not much like existential cancer stuff that's happening here. Hence, if that's why you're interested to read this live email in the first place, then you can know this one can be skipped. After I finished last live email, I went straight to Ratio. In the process, reneging on my pledge to watch some anime with Grace before I left. The spell check phase for the last live email took much longer than I expected, thus I did not have time for anime. Once I got to Ratio, I simply engaged in some small talk and responded to a bunch of emails while the lecture was given, and then I whiteboard fought with Alan. Again, due to Alan's recent lack of philosophical education, the whiteboard fight was really just me being extremely humbly a genius, and Alan trying to keep up. But nevertheless, it was good. Here's a picture of that whiteboard. You can tell I did all the talking because the entire whiteboard is illegible. From there, I went on a drive with City through Rich Canyon, which I haven't done in quite a while, and we talked, and it was good. Once I got back, I dropped off at home, and then I did some Funime and went to sleep. Wednesday morning, I had quiet time, worked on planning for my philosophy class, did Funime, and then had mega big brain thoughts. And thereafter, Toby, the Rutgers philosophy grad student, came over, and we took a walk and talk. Now, first off, I would like to point out that I have a new compliment from said Toby, which was garnered via him introducing me to his philosophy professor at Rutgers. And of course, we're still working on getting the last one tattooed across my chest, but this one is arguably just as good. So of course, I must recount it here. I want to connect you with Alex, CC'd here, a highly motivated and self-taught undergraduate who I've met since being back in Colorado. He's a Christian, and though he's a mechanical engineer, he engages at a philosophical level on par with most early graduate students I met at Rutgers. I suspect he's more philosophically literate and sophisticated than I was when coming into graduate school. Takes a deep breath and lets the compliment rest in the air for a moment. Oh yeah. Who needs drugs when you have compliments like this, huh? Though I will say, this latter compliment wasn't as psychologically potent as the first, thus it seems drug and compliments might have more similarities. Not that I would know, because I've never done drugs, mind you. Well, except opioids. But that doesn't count. Well, I mean, I guess obviously opioids count. But opioids don't count because I were used for legitimate reasons. Though I guess that's what most drug addicts would probably say, wouldn't they? I feel like the more I try to explain things, the deeper I dig the hole in which I find myself. So I'm just gonna stop explaining things and move on. Because, reasons. Anyway, Toby and I went on a philosophy walk and talk, and here's what I have to say about that. First, Toby is pretty well informed, more than me. He's not only sufficiently equipped to, name drop and do so accurately, but he's also aware of and understands the relevant content that what those names have to say. On average, I'm familiar with all the content he brings up, though I couldn't have attributed it to this or that philosopher like he can. And so far, there's only been one or two times where he used a word or referenced an idea that I hadn't heard before. So his crystallized intelligence is greater than mine, but not to the degree where I'm at a significant disadvantage to our conversations, or the point where there's a jargon barrier and I don't understand what he's saying. In essence, he's basically the perfect amount of more informed, such that I can both occasionally learn something, but also meaningfully engage with the proposed content. Further, his generative ability seems pretty high, though I'm not actually sure if I'm seeing his ability to generate or an extensive amount of tools and items. However, it's also strangely gappy. He'll produce this very interesting and seemingly creative argument for why he has the moral high ground in constraining moral language's usage in this or that way, and then 10 minutes later maintain a position that no one has the moral high ground or is able to for realsies constrain language's usage, seemingly failing to recognize that his own arguments he just provided were incompatible with his new position. So because of this gappiness, I'm not really sure if he has a high generative ability for realsies or if he just heard someone else make this argument and is regurgitating what they said. I suppose that's yet to be seen. Regardless, due to his high level of philosophical education, at the very least, because what else would you expect from a Rutgers grad student, I found our conversations genuinely interesting, which is more than I can say for a lot of philosophical conversations I'm around these days. Nevertheless, there are some things that I haven't really enjoyed. While his reasoning is linear on a small scale, it's certainly not on a large scale. It's as if his linear reasoning comes in packages or little boxes, where everything within the package or box fits together very nicely and makes sense. But then when I ask him how this box relates to another box or which box, he's trying to develop in particular, he's auto pivots. It's the very fact that I've actually, captured and clarified the distinctions he's trying to make, and then asked him which of the four, say, aspects of the options he's trying to argue for means, he then decides that just guarantees he ought to bring up a fifth path and then go down it. Hence, while each self-contained topic is rewarding and interesting, trying to get him to fixate on topic or show how it all ties together is just very vexing. Second, he seems to have major areas of oversight. I'll wait to write about this until I'm sure, and I've given him a chance to respond to my criticism, because I'm reading through his pre-dissertation at the moment. But at least right now, I'm pretty convinced he's made some pretty massive mistakes. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he has, seen these apparent flaws and has a response. Who's to say? But I still suspect he doesn't have an ace up his sleeve here. Nevertheless, we'll see, and I'll give my verdict after hearing him out. So yeah, the talk with Toby was good, but man, did he say some whack things. Still was nice, and, it was a good time. Once I got home, Mom and I used the generous gift of my Aunt Marion and bought Five Guys and brought it home to eat while watching Ichijo with Grace. I then worked on AMV clip gathering, only to discover the clips I gathered were blacked out by Crunchyroll's anti-screen recording thing, which meant all the time was wasted. However, I also listened to Chris beat cancer as I tried to gather AMVs. And you know what? I would like to say that because I listened to Chris, the whole thing wasn't a waste of time, but unfortunately that's not true. Sometimes I feel as if I'm the only person that can see these very obvious logical fallacies that most people engage in. People say things and somehow just don't see how their conclusion does not follow it off from the premises. Here, I'm going to do a mini Chris summary, trying to be as accurate to how he said things, and then I'm going to show you why it's a big dumb. Chris, here are 15 or so peer-reviewed studies about that show what you eat, drink, and surround yourself with are proven to increase the likelihood of getting cancer. Therefore, if you remove yourself from these situations, your body can heal you. Your body made it, your body can heal it. Moreover, there are lifestyle choices like smoking, obesity, and hyper-processed food intake that have been shown to statistically increase your risk of cancer. Thus, if you are not willing to change these lifestyle habits, there is no point in pursuing other treatment options. They won't work. If you don't have the willpower to do what it takes to heal yourself and change these lifestyle habits, you really don't want to live bad enough. And that's okay. If you're ready to die, then I hope you die in peace. But for those of you that really want to live, here's what you need to do. That's actually what he said, and how he said it, to the best of my memory. And of course, that's abbreviated from like an hour-long talk, but like, my dude, what are you thinking? He says in no uncertain terms that his listeners either need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and radically fix their lifestyle, or just accept the fact that they really don't want to live and just go die. He then sprinkles like a touch of, look, if you want to go, just die. I'm not judging you. But like, that's legit what he says. Now, for someone like me, that sort of statement, I look at that sort of statement, I'm like, well, that conclusion doesn't follow. And would only follow if radically changing your lifestyle and diet were the only possible ways to live. But of course, that hasn't been shown by the studies cited. So it's very likely false. But like, I can't imagine someone, just some like overweight teenage girl listening to this and being like absolutely devastated. Like, Chris, my dude, this is not a good message. So yeah, just in general, if any of you thought this Chris Beat Cancer guy was a good resource, he's actually not. So please don't spread him. However, aside from the horrible approach to disease management, Chris is just straight wrong. Let me explain why his inference is unreasonable, and then let me break down what cancer is and how it works, at least to the degree to which I've been educated by my immunology book, which I've memorized. So, for those of you sympathetic to his reasoning, you will see why it is not applicable. First, Chris correctly notes that food, water, environment, and certain behavioral factors all do genuinely have, a statistical influence on your likelihood of getting certain cancers. In other words, they've been shown to cause cancer. However, just because something might genuinely be able to cause the state of affairs does not mean that removal of it can remedy the state of affairs. For example, texting while driving is shown to increase the likelihood of being injured in a car crash. In fact, driving or being driven has a near, one-to-one correlation with being injured in a car crash. Thus, one could say that riding a motor vehicle is the number one cause of being injured in a car crash, and this would be clearly true. However, that does not mean that because riding in a motor vehicle is the number one cause of being injured in a car crash, that if you do not ride a motor vehicle, you are more likely to heal from a crash. Aside from the trivial effect of the increase of likelihood that you will crash again, which, is a thing, clearly, whether or not you ride in a motor vehicle does not increase or decrease the likelihood you will heal from the crash you had previously, at least simpliciter. Thus, while riding in a motor vehicle has very closely causally connected with the likelihood of being injured, it is very causally distantly connected, if connected at all, with the likelihood of you recovering from that injury. Hence, while Chris does have fantastic evidence to show that food, environment, and lifestyle all cause cancer, that does not mean that fixing those things helps heal cancer. This is also where his favorite mantra, your body made it, your body can heal it, is often, though not always, false when it comes to cancer. The reason for this is cancer is defined as one of those categories of things your body can't reliably heal without external aid. See, for the cell to be cancerous, it has to be the case your body has, by definition, been unable to kill it or been unable to kill it well enough. Fun fact, our bodies actually intentionally make cancer in our thyroid for the sake of giving us immunity. In our thyroid, our body actually mutates the genetics of T cells so that they seek out and kill something. It then sees if that something could possibly be part of you, and if it is, the thyroid kills the cell, just full Mill Alchemist Nina. However, there are rare cases where something the T cell is trained to kill isn't in fact something that your cells have, and thus the thyroid lets it live and go chill in the, if we ever have some weird alien from space on the outside trying to kill us and need a super special weapon that's super secret to go and kill it specifically. Center. Or the IWEHSWFTOTTKUANASSSSWTKISC for short. Then, when the unknown alien from the outside does invade you, your dendritic cells, who just, slurp some of the enemy's dead guts, travel to the IWEHSWFTOTTKUANASSSSWTKISC and mill around there for a few days trying to find the right chimera that is just ugly enough that this particular virus is terrified of it. It's their worst nightmare. Then once it does, they do this special dance we don't need to talk about, and then the T cell replicates itself a lot, and the rest is history. The point is, genetic mutations of cells not only happen all the time in your body by accident, but they also happen all the time on purpose, and we're really glad they do. What makes the big difference is that when something for realsies is cancer, that means your body's safety mechanisms for dealing with the unlikely event of mutation have all failed. Hence, the cell starts dividing and multiplying uncontrollably. There's a lot of safety mechanisms in your body that they have in place, and I know at least that are four for significant for cancer, so I'll go over those. The first is, how much should I divide? Safety mechanism. Even if all the other mechanisms fail, as long as the cell doesn't divide or divides really slowly, we can just kind of ignore it. The second is, can you persuade me to commit suicide? Safety mechanism. See, all cells, if possessed or kissed by a killer T cell, can be persuaded that life just isn't worth living anymore, so they will put all their affairs in order and kill themselves. However, sometimes a cell gets a mutation where even a kiss from a T cell isn't enough to convince it that life isn't worth living, or it just has no lips. And this is granted becoming a very strange analogy. Third, the window to my soul safety mechanism, where there are all these like hot dog bun-like molecules, technically called MHC class 2 molecules, but you don't really even care, so I'm just not going to mention that. And they basically randomly sample the inside of your cell and put some of those insides on the outside. And see, killer T cells know what ought to be on the outside. Know what ought to be on the inside. So if they see something being presented in these hot dog bun-like molecules that shouldn't be there, an analogical pickle, because pickles do not belong on hot dog buns, or the cell just doesn't have enough of these hot dog buns, they'll kill the cell. Finally, if all those safety measures fail, then there are rules in place about where supply chains, aka blood vessels, ought to go. So even for cancer cells, without access to the body's supply chain, they will starve. Thus, for cancer to happen, the cell also must have a mutation that allows it to get Amazon Prime and have food shipped to its door. If and only if all four of these safety mechanisms fail, which is statistically very unlikely, then will a cell or group of cells be pronounced cancerous. Now, of course, all these safety mechanisms can be, gradated, and this is where things get tricky. Because maybe the mutation the cell allows to get Amazon, but not Amazon Prime. So while the food is taking 2 weeks to ship, it starts starving, but then it doesn't, where maybe it lives in like New Zealand for that matter, because maybe it takes like 2 months if you had Prime. Anyway, the point is, or maybe the cell does have lips, but it's really resistant to being kissed. Or maybe the cell has hot dog buns, but it has a way to disguise the pickle and make it look like a hot dog, so the inspecting T cells are fooled most of the time. The point is, there's potentially infinite ways these safety mechanisms can break, and it's even and due to the quirkiness of each individual cancer, the causes of spontaneous remission and so forth, there's no real way to determine what happened and what's broken. I did not say that correctly. Anyway, well, it's always possible you have one of these quirky mutations in your body. You could always possibly find a way around it to maybe counteract it. And so you don't really know if you have one of these mutations until it's so thoroughly broken your body that your body can't hope to beat it. To put it another way, maybe the boss you're up against seems like it's impossible to beat, but then you learn that if you just hide behind a rock and shoot him through the crack, he can't hit you and you can gimp him. Or maybe it's the case the boss you're up against is for realsies, has infinite HP and he's straight unkillable. You just don't know. So while there are success stories of spontaneous remission that make it seem like Chris's method actually works, what happened is the immune system figured out how to gimp those people's particular cancer, and thus they were able to beat it. And who knows if the radical lifestyle change enhanced the body's ability to find a successful gimp. There's really any millions of ways that could affect you, so no way to say one way or the other. But there are lots of other people you don't hear about because they're dead that tried to gimp their boss and found out he was for reals unkillable. So yeah, there's definitely a bias in what information reaches your ears through Chris's program. Anyway, hopefully that'll help you understand cancer better and why this guy is the worst. Plus, I hope that it helped increase your knowledge of immunology. Also, for anyone interested, the literal best book for learning all this stuff is just sitting on my shelf waiting to be read. So if you just ask me, I will loan it to you. Also, if anyone else wants to read it, it's not, and that is not in my geographical proximity, send me an email and I'll send it to you. Okay, where was I? Right, I listened to Crispy Cancer. After finishing that, I called Jordan and we caught up, which was good. And then from there, I sadly discovered that the best 5 Evergarden AMV ever had been taken down, which was mega sad. However, I found the song that the AMV used, and holy cow, it hits. Very good song. I just listened to that on the front porch around midnight, and it was very nice. After that, I cleaned up my paper Rocketbook journal thing and I went to bed. The following morning, I went in for my post-surgery appointment where the doctor was like, yeah. And then I went home. I ate food. I told more people about me having cancer, listened to more Crispy Cancer, and then decided that was a waste of my time. From there, I talked to my cousin Tris, and that was good. They're doing well. They found a pretzel bacon pub burger copycat recipe that makes me very excited, and it might work out. Then, once I got off that call, I watched Nichijou with Mom and Grace. However, Grace endeavored rather successfully to replicate the dance that the anime girls did at the start, and I felt a particular mix of, what have I done? And this is fantastic at the same time. I then went over to CSU for an early start to philosophy class, which I'm very glad I did because the quiz took ages. Holy cow, it was 3 hours so long. From there, we went over to Neo's house, where my 3 students were tasked with meta-hacking, the most difficult form of hacking, and they mostly failed, but they gave it their best shot. So yeah, that was the day. The next morning, I had Funame before driving over to UC Health and meeting up with Alan for my first oncology appointment. Overall, I like the doctor. He's evidently, he evidently thought some of my questions were stupid, but he was respectful and honest. Basically, the appointment was just a lot of, here's what's happening, here's what needs to happen, here's what could happen. And then, yeah, the plan is to start chemo a little after the 23rd. In the meantime, I've finished getting my heart and lungs examined, and the day after tomorrow, I will be getting a port placed in my chest. And for those of you that don't know, the port is a tube with a stabby bit they put under your skin and thread through your neck into the artery right above your heart. The purpose is to ensure that the chemochemicals are diffused as soon as they hit the bloodstream, and also to ensure they don't leak into my veins. Because if they do, they will munch me like Bofuri from the inside. Plus, there's a nice feature that I won't have to be stabbed properly every time. So, they can just stab through the skin and stab into my port. Anyway, I'm not excited about it, but, it has to happen, so such is life. The other thing that they did tell me that I didn't know before is there's like a 20 or 30% chance that after chemo, I will become irreversibly infertile. Not that that matters a ton, given my current plan of bachelor for the win, but still, since I'm now Alex 2.0, the post-trip position of bachelorhood has been more pragmatic rather than dogmatic. Thus, it's unfortunate that my options might become limited in that way. But, of the possible fairly likely permanent repercussions for chemo, that's not too bad compared to many others. So yeah, I get my PET scan on the 17th, at which point I will know the staging of the cancer and also more specifically how the treatment is going to look. And there you go. That's what I learned from my day and where I'm at. After that appointment, they slurped 6 vials of blood for me, ran some tests, and it turns out my blood work is great. There's little concern for kidney problems, but it turns out, there was a little concern for kidney problems, but it turns out it's probably a false alarm. From there, I went to Five Guys with Alan and treated him to a burger as thanks. After that, I went to Neo's and played some Halo, and we decided, since I had the house to myself, we would go over to my place and spend the rest of the night there. Cindy came over for that, and it was fun. We watched anime, played Magic, and burnt mini pizzas. Saturday morning, I met up with Amelia Macy for the first time outside of family trips. She claims it was cancer independent, but who's really to say? And yeah, we just got coffee at Alley Cat and then walked down Springer Trail and back. Honestly, she seems to be figuring out some stuff pretty well, and she's also, baby brain philosophying, so it was fun to talk to her. After hanging out with Amelia, I then worked on my philosophy class some more, and then from there I went over to John's place to hang. We played some Magic games, and he crushed me, and then he made some buffalo mac and cheese, and that was pretty good. After that, I took the balance to Myers' house, and John drove separately, and once we got there, we played some Magic games until about 11:15 or so. Oh, and then on the way home, I figured out that what was causing the rattling coming from my car. It had been rattling for the past month, and I was just kind of ignoring it, thinking that it must be the Magic cards in my trunk, but also being too lazy to really figure it out. But it turns out, after I placed my spark plugs and injector coils, the engine cover was loose, and that was probably causing the rattling. Don't ask me about the probably. Don't worry about it. So yeah, I got home, did Funime, and then slept. The next day was church. I felt basically back to normal. We played Magic at lunch bunch, which was kind of meh and boring. I then drove over to Neo's house where D&D was played, and I worked on chainmail. However, right after dinner, Neo started exhibiting cold symptoms, so I was like, peace, and left there promptly. Normally, I wouldn't care about being sick, but right now I have to make the most of... I take most of my diagnostic tests, and if I got sick, they'd be postponed, so that would be a big sad. I then watched some Nishido with Grace, played Moss on my VR headset, and then watched some VR with Grace. Watched some VR. Anyway, before writing in my Google Docs until... I called Dad later that night. The next morning was Monday, and Sydney just asked, hey, can I join you for your day-to-day things? And I was like, sure. Chica not included. No, for sure. So not Chica. So Sydney sat next to me for the next 4 hours as I did my own stuff. Honestly, it was just a straight benefit as I was 0% inconvenienced and, or taken off task, and things just felt more meaningful because she was there. Just saying, anyone is welcome to drop by anytime and just do their thing while I do mine. If that's something that appeals to you, of course, do it. And if it doesn't, then don't. It just makes life a little bit better, though. Anyway, that was nice. While she was there, I did quiet time, philosophy stuff, watched some anime, which Sydney joined in for. And then I did my philosophy study, which had an intermittent call with the great Varley, after which I went to get my heart echo done, which was honestly kind of creepy. They make you go into this dark room, lay on your side, and this dude just takes ultrasound pictures of your heart for an hour. It's not as if the guy or the environment was particularly creepy, but seeing your heart beat in real time and seeing the little flaps open and close, nope, I really don't like that. I would like to pretend that I'm not a meat sack with flesh flaps opening and closing due to pressure gradients, please and thank you. And showing me that my meat sackiness is very real and doing it for about an hour does not help me with that cognitive dissonance. So yeah, not my favorite, but my heart is healthy, so at least that's good. From there, I went back to the Balance House. As it turns out, Neil wasn't really sick, and worked on refining the rules for the alternate versions of Magic. I then drove him and me to the Jameses, where we ate food, and then proceeded to play D&D. Neo and I got into a scuffle at the end of it, but I think we resolved it well. And from there, we watched Bofuri before going home. I just added the Season 2 Bofuri intro to my playlist, and I've been loving that song. Very good. Yesterday, I did Food in the morning, established myself with a new GPT general practitioner that's not Nestus, and then went over to the Myers house and went on a lengthy walk with Johanna. See, the case with Johanna is strange, as only relatively recently, maybe a year and a half ago, has she reached the status of full rational human, so interacting with her has required a shift, which I'm not super skilled at yet. Don't get me wrong, she's so much more interesting now that she's fully rational, but it's weird for someone you distinctly remember being 12, or how old Lily is now, to grow into someone that's 17. I think Johanna's 17? It's not the first time I've had to undergo the mental shift. It happened with Bench too, but I'm still not quite used to it. Anyway, it was cool to hear her inner life, and honestly surprising to see how much her childhood experiences and approach were very similar to my own. I definitely think I understand her in a way that I don't understand a lot of other people because of that. And yeah, it was good. We walked briskly for quite some distance, had a really good conversation. I enjoyed the time. She'll be getting her driver's license soon, from the sound of it, and she might be coming over a fair amount, so that's exciting. So yeah, we finished our walk, chilled in the coffee shop with iced chai for 30 minutes while Mrs. Myers came to pick us up. Then Mrs. Myers drove us back to my car, which was basically the event. From there, I drove home, talked with Mom before receiving some really good sympathy cookies from David, the soccer guy. I then took those sympathy cookies to Ratio and distributed them for the betterment of all. And then, while the Ratio lecture happened, I worked on D&D prep and read through the first part of Toby's dumb paper. Ugh, that was vexing for me. From there, I talked to Alan and listened to Noah and Joe debate badly until it was the case that they largely wore themselves out. So I grabbed Neo, and we all went on a CSU walk where I used this opportunity to teach them how to debate well. And while yes, it took a bit, there were definitely quite a few times when they talked past each other and stuff, and I had to step in and clarify. But eventually, they managed to work together and build a system, and it was very exciting. Essentially, I got to teach them on a hands-on way, like how to actually have good, productive dialogue, which consisted of, with the help of my interjections, them building a system that we were both happy with and could share, and it was absolutely beautiful. For sure, Chicken Now included a highlight in my philosophy teaching career thus far. By the time I was done with these lads, they're going to be philosophical gods. So yeah, that was very exciting and rewarding, and that was the end of my day, which was the end of yesterday. As for today, I woke up and sat in a box. See, apparently the lung test requires you sit in an airtight glass box and do breathing stuff, so that's what I did. It felt like I was in one of those, like, Houdini escape tanks without the water, though. And yeah, apparently I have grade A lungs, or so the testing lady told me, so that was good. As for after that, I got home, watched some anime, ate some food, and have been working on this email ever since. Thanks for reading, and I'll get back to you in the next week or so.